Hello, and welcome to the Keep Learning podcast. My name is Alicja Syska.
And I'm Matthew Mesley.
And the subject of today's podcast is study spaces. Matthew, why are they important? Why are we talking about it?
Well, we're talking about study spaces and study environments because getting the right study space can be really important if you want to concentrate properly on your work and to be more productive with what you do. I think obviously during the pandemic, there's been a lot less choice in terms of the study spaces or environments that we have. So I used to love, for instance, working in a cafe sometimes, or working in the library, that kind of sort of communal feel, but also private if you get the right space. So I think it can be really important to your sort of work routine and how you can get things done.
Yeah, certainly. And I think because it's so important, there is actually a lot of advice out there on how to approach it or how to create a good study space, a conducive one to learning. But I think because a lot of this advice makes certain assumptions about what's possible to create, maybe we could start with real scenarios, imagining real scenarios of the conditions in which different students may have to study. So maybe I'll start with the kind of classic, most probably the easiest one to tackle, a student with their own room or even their own flat, not sharing with anyone, having a nice study room with a desk. The ideal, but obviously that's very, very rare. I didn't have it for sure when I was a student. So what other possibilities are out there?
Yeah, the reality is that, when we talk about this ideal study space, not everyone's going to have that, are they? A lot of the time they may have to share with different people. They might have particular caring or parental roles, or they may be under someone's authority in terms of, they might be back at home with their parents. So space and time can sometimes be limited, can't it?
Yeah. But as we did say, the place or the context in which we study actually affects how we remember that information or how we even relate to the subject of our studies, right? And actually, there's some research that shows that this context matters. And sometimes people try to recreate, let's say, the context of an exam, right? If they know an exam is going to take place in a particular room, they will try to create a similar feel in their study space, like maybe a similar temperature. They know the room will be very cold. And,
oh my God, I would hate that.
But because there is all this research that shows that context matters, depending on how committed one is to their studies, it may result in this kind of experimentation. But what do you feel is the worst thing or the greatest problem when it comes to study spaces that needs to be taken into consideration when creating our own one?
That's a difficult one.
Because to me, it's distractions.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Do you agree?
I think we can all have those kinds of distractions, can't we? But people with particular caring roles will have more sometimes. So
yeah, certainly. But
they won't be able to necessarily sort of sit down and be like, right, I can spend the next 50 minutes just concentrating on this one thing.
And so actually the point you raise is an important one, that distractions don't mean the same thing to everyone. For everyone, a distraction is something else, right? It can be noises, it can be other people, it can be things on your to-do list that create an anxiety that is a distraction, or even things like smells, or the visual field that is maybe too open or too close, or it can be pretty much anything. So I think maybe the first step to creating a good study space is to try to identify the distractions that...
Yeah, because it's even worse when you don't know that you're being distracted.
Yeah.
But you are.
Yeah. So that's actually, you know what? Let's break the pattern. I think this would be a good moment to introduce my object, because we usually do
Okay.
it towards the
Yeah,
end
sure.
of our podcast, but I think this is a good moment to introduce mine. So my object, and this won't probably surprise you much, but I chose headphones.
Ah, perfect.
Okay, headphones. And actually, the blue color is also there for a
I'm
reason.
liking the color. Yeah.
I'm going to put them on. No, I can't because I can't hear you now. But that's actually the point. So let me tell you about why I chose them. Well, to me, creating a dedicated study space basically means separating yourself as much as possible from other areas of life, so you can remove as many of these distractions as possible, and also so you can feel as comfortable as you can, but not too comfortable. That's also important, right? And to me, headphones actually symbolize the separation from the world. When you have such big, like when I put them on, I couldn't hear you, and all of a sudden my world kind of shrunk because they didn't allow any kind of outside audio signals to reach me. So I managed to kind of shut myself out, prioritizing just the vision. And even, because they're big, they kind of feel like they're limiting my vision as well a little bit. And then also in terms of what you do here with headphones, you're in total control, right? These won't be random background noises, but carefully filtered one, because you may choose to listen to some music, that kind of music that helps you to concentrate, or you can play nature sounds. I particularly like the rain because it doesn't make me feel like I'm missing out on good weather.
I normally don't need that where yeah, it's normally raining anyway.
Oh yeah, of course. And then I think listening to meditation is also good, or these kinds of wellness sounds.
Not too relaxing though. Don't
Not
want to
too
be so
relaxing,
relaxed.
exactly. Yeah, that's important. But you can even use them not to listen to anything, but just as noise reduction or noise canceling altogether. So I think that whatever it is, and as long as it's not too loud, even though I know some people who like it being very loud. So as long as it's not too loud and not too distracting, to me, headphones symbolize this perfect concentration that is so invaluable when studying.
Yeah.
And the blue elements here symbolize blue sky thinking and therefore
very
creativity.
I think it also, for me, it also symbolizes privacy, because this might be a bit of a British thing, but you often put your headphones on while you're walking about or on public transport as a signal to say, I am in my own space.
Yeah. Don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me, exactly. And I think it can work like that in a study space too, because you're very much like you're in your own zone, you're aware that maybe other people are around, but there's that kind of like, don't cut, I'm doing something at the moment. Unless it's important.
It's like the kind of do not disturb sign on your door, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what, let's maybe double click on that issue of noise since we're talking about it. So I know that there are different opinions on it, and I actually remember being young and finding certain comfort in loud music when studying as well, which is something definitely my parents could not understand. But general and very consistent advice from different sources is that our study spaces should be as quiet as possible. Yeah. And in fact, there are some studies that show that even white noise can increase our levels of cortisol and therefore increasing our anxiety. And then it decreases our ability to think clearly and retain information. So there's a lot of, so I don't know, how do you relate to noise and quiet? Do you?
I feel it depends. For me, like if I'm doing things that are kind of low level concentration, then it's fine to have some music on in the background for me. But normally it has to be music that I've listened to so many times that it has become background.
Mm.
However, when it gets to that point where I'm like, I have to construct or create something and I really need to concentrate on this, I have to then have silence. So that nothing that I'm just fully concentrating on that thing. So I think it can, there are layers or levels to it, aren't there?
Yes, certainly. And again, everyone has a different preference, but we can speak or generalize a little bit, because there are some there is research, psychological research, and experiments that show us certain things, like, for example, that listening to classical music benefits the brain, and also sleep patterns and stress levels, etc. And there are studies which show that you can retain more information when listening to classical music. Yeah, but it doesn't work with pop music because you have lyrics and you can be distracted, so that's counterproductive. And also jazz didn't have the same correlation. And in fact, there was a study I found today which found that students who listened to a lecture where classical music was played in the background during the lecture actually scored significantly higher in a quiz on this lecture when compared to similar group of students who heard the same lecture but with no music. So
that's interesting.
In a way, you could from that kind of conclude that classical music would help us retain information, because maybe somehow it raises the emotional level at which we process information.
That's interesting. I have to admit now that I used to probably listen to far too much pop music as a student, but I think I used to do it in my breaks. So I'd be concentrating and then I'd go into, this will show my age, and then I'd go into and watch a bit of MTV or VH1, which I don't even know exists anymore, but they were music video channels.
I know, they were amazing. They were amazing. I love them. I actually recorded on my VHS cassettes.
Oh no!
different videos, and made my own collections and tapes, mixtapes.
So we're not forcing you to necessarily to listen to classical music, but I do think that's a really interesting point about how some kind of music, some different kinds of music might be more sort of attuned to learning or studying.
Yeah. In fact, Chopin is playing in my background. I know. Can you hear?
Very nice. That's like that.
But actually, Chopin makes me very nostalgic, so I'm not sure it's very productive.
We need to make a podcast playlist or music playlist.
Yeah. But I think at the very least, if we may like music or no music, we may like this kind of music versus a different kind of music, or just silence. But I think at the very least, we can reduce some of these kind of random noises that may be distracting, such as a phone ping, right? Or an email ping. So putting the phone on silent and maybe turning off the email is the least we can do, maybe, to reduce a little bit of that oral audio distraction.
Yeah, and when you really have to concentrate, maybe putting it on a bit lower or turning it off just for that sort of like 10 or 15 minutes. I like that.
A small sacrifice for...
Then you can always listen again in the break. So
Exactly. Okay, good. So we have tackled noise and kind of distractions and potentially just creating a space that is separated from the rest of our life. What else would this space need to be for it to work?
So I think you need to sort of make sure, in terms of sort of the characteristics or like the sort of attributes that you might want to have, you want to think about things like lighting and temperature. Those two things I think are really important. So
make it comfortable. So it's not too hot, too cold, too dark, too bright. Maybe even, I don't know, the chair. I mean, I have a nice chair. But
I do not have a nice chair, so I'm quite jealous.
But I actually dragged it from the office. I didn't have a nice chair before, but that was allowed, that was encouraged. So I took that opportunity, and it made a massive difference to how I relate to my, work at my desk. So I would definitely recommend a nice chair, and it helps with our backs as well, right? So Matthew,
yeah, I will. I'm gonna see about that. See about
put it on your
investing in
Christmas list.
that. Yeah. So yeah, there's comfortableness, and obviously sometimes that you can't always, you can't do sometimes you can only make the most of what you've got, can't you? Or try to. I suppose other apart from comfortableness, there's tidiness, which I'm really bad at, but I try to keep that in mind. And while I don't think I take my advice in the sense of I probably don't tidy my desk every day, I try to do it sort of every couple of days at least. And sort of wipe it down and things like that, and tidy around me as well, or the paper that I've chucked somewhere or other. So and I think that can be really good, especially if you're starting a project or moving on to something else. It's useful to just sort of take the folder on a particular piece of work that you did yesterday and maybe move it and take out the stuff related to the particular task that you're doing at the time. Do you think that's...
So it's about being well organized. So having that space tidy is also linked to organizing it, so we actually know where our things are, because there is such a thing as creative mess. I do agree, but I think it sometimes may keep us away from actually being productive, because we lose things in a mess, right? Or misplace things, and then it takes us a long time to identify where they are, and that's annoying and can create frustrations and additional anxiety, because actually our essay is dependent on that scrap of paper that we know is somewhere in that pile of other papers, but actually
it's reminding me of that meme where there's all those like pieces of paper on the wall and the guy's like trying to figure out
so organizing it, I agree, it's very important. And to me it extends also from the analog world on the desk also to the digital world on the computer. So organizing, things, categorizing into folders that we actually understand and can allow us to find the information that we need. It's also really important, because it's so easy to get lost. Especially at the beginning, maybe not at the beginning, because there is maybe 1, 2, or 3 modules and just a couple of essays, a little bit of research here and there. But then with time, it starts growing and growing, and then all of a sudden we have pictures from our last summer in the same folder as our research on a particular subject. So that becomes a little bit messy, and it's not conducive to productivity as well, right?
I think it's about, I'm someone that's a work in progress in terms of organization, but I think what I always try and do is make sure that some of these activities or tasks are part of my to-do list. So because planning and organizing should see that as part of work. I often sort of try and include a few low energy things, even if it in your to-do list, even if it's tidy up Word, tidy up Google, something like that. I know they might seem like you don't need to put on your list, but I put everything on the list. But or at the same time, arrange your folders a little bit more effectively, or put some documents into a folder and name it. Have that if you're ticking along with it, you don't have to be the most perfect organizer. It's about sort of recognizing that this can be part of work, and that you can do this a little bit as you go along. Does that make sense? You might be much more organized than me, they probably.
No, I don't know about that, but but you know what, getting organized, I think, as you say, it's a work in progress. We always change the way we work because we find a new way of working, or a new way of making notes, or a new way of creating lists even, right? And I think it's always worth looking for the new way, a more effective, efficient one. And there are lots of apps out there as well that can help with that. I think Evernote is quite a useful one. But
it's got Keep Note as well.
Yeah. And so it's about finding the one that works, the one we're happy to work with, always to keep it always open, to always update it, etc. And it's not just another document buried somewhere in another folder that we misnamed.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, it reminds me. So, I mean, one thing that I suppose, if you're not even at that stage where you're sort of doing a little bit of organizing, is there sort of like a way or any advice that you give to people just trying to think about how can they introduce some organization or time management into their routine? What do you think?
On a kind of you mean in the digital world, or just
in both? But either in a digital.
Yeah, I think to me, the first step is to even learn to, let's say, make lists. Because it's not necessarily everyone's routine. And I think it was never mine, actually, because I always relied on my memory, but it's at a certain age. I realized that, I just forget things, or maybe because I'm too, I don't know, overworked, or there are too many things happening at the same time and you can't keep track of all of them. So actually making lists, I maybe started making lists maybe 5 years ago. Really.
See, now that you say it, I don't think I wrote a single list as a student.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But I do now.
But starting to learning how to keep them, but also being able to differentiate between the having two parts to that list, the urgent part and the part just not to forget, is also important. Because if your list grows and grows, you may also start losing track, and it will be completely counterproductive. So having one that is short term and one long term is a good idea.
You'll just feel too overwhelmed, won't you?
Yeah, but even things like, putting all your appointments, deadlines and everything in your diary, and have reminders. Like I have reminders for everything I do, because otherwise it will be just so easy to miss that. Or having, like a weekly reminders of what's in store for that week for me, etc., or for that day, even depending on.
I sometimes have reminders to remind me to remind something later on.
The meta reminders.
Or to place in a reminder, like.
Yeah, certainly. And but we're kind of saying it's an age thing or whatever, but it doesn't have to be. It's just about how you feel safer, maybe, or more comfortable, or more in control of things. And I think having lists and reminders kind of puts us a little bit more in control of the various things that we have to hold together.
And they also help you just tick off things as well, to give you that sort of to know that you've actually done something.
Hey, and now I can have a chocolate.
I like that.
But I wanted to actually come back for a moment to that, to the space again of comfort and we mentioned that it should be comfortable, but not too comfortable, but also pleasant, tidy and pleasant, because we should enjoy being there. It's not our personal Alcatraz. But it's maybe personalizing that space and giving it the kind of feel we like it to have. Can make a difference. So, for example, you mentioned light, and I like soft light as well. So even though I have enough light in my room, I will still have a table lamp, because it gives that kind of homey, nice kind of feeling, right? But I also have a plant on my desk.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I showed you the other day my little cactus, but I also have this one. That's another plant you can't kill, so that's a good one for your desk. And also, there are some studies that came out, which were run by NASA, showing that actually plants make the space more peaceful. So
interesting.
There's scientific evidence for that. But also, I don't only have a plant, I also have a rock, big rock, on my desk. because it just reminds me that at some point in the week, I will be able to get out and actually go hiking.
I like
So there is
that.
a lot of promise in that rock.
Yeah.
And I also have a glass of water just because I can't live without water. But these elements make the space mine, personal. And I have other personal items around, but these are the kinds of things that make me feel good.
And I think
Do you have anything around you that makes
only like my mascot, but he's not on my desk per se, but he's very close by. And if I had like, as a lot of people are finding, my study space is a makeshift study space. So it was previously a dining table, and now or like where we used to eat when we have had friends over. So basically, all I can see is my monitor and then my partner's massive monitor in front of me. So it's probably not the ideal space, but I think if I was to sort of have one day, the dream would be to have a study. That would be amazing. To be able to have sort of like a few pictures up, perhaps, or like a plant, or just a few things that sort of like remind you that like you have, that your work is not the only thing. And that there is sort of life outside of that space. So I think that's a really good idea.
You said it's not ideal, but you made it work, and it works for you.
Right? Definitely.
So I think that's the key, isn't it? I mean, it's never going to be ideal, but as long as we can make it work for us, that's the important bit. I think that one thing that maybe we didn't mention when we talked about how, the comfort of the space is maybe the fact that sometimes we cannot have a desk or a table, and we may end up working on a bed or in some corner. I don't know even, because there are probably all sorts of scenarios out there. But maybe there are also ways to not feel like we're trapped in the same spot all day. And either make breaks, or maybe utilize the kitchen, or go outside, or just introduce a little bit of variety in that day.
I think that's important sometimes, to be able to, because sometimes you have to, there are certain tasks maybe that might require more like a desk-like space. There are others that you can sort of get away with, or just feel more like inclined to go to, on the sofa. Like if you're just reading, or I don't know, revising or something like that, then you might want some kind of space that you do associate with comfort or relaxation.
That's how I work, actually. I usually work kind of 9 to 6 at my desk, and then have dinner, and if I have still some projects to finish, I can't come back to the desk, because it just makes me feel like I've never left it. So then I get on the sofa and you just put my laptop on my lap, and that's where I do the other projects that kind of top up of the day. But it just kind of feels different already, just because I just changed that environment a little bit. It makes
I think that makes sense. I think one thing that you perhaps have to be careful about, if you're a student and you're in a communal space, or like you want to study in a communal space, then I suppose just be aware that like other people might use that space, because it's a communal space, as a social space. So I think it's worth perhaps like checking with your friends or flatmates, oh, is this okay that I use this space? And also just don't be annoyed or too annoyed if other people then use that space in its for watching TV or something like that. And again, you can always put your headphones on. So because
yourself out.
Exactly. But I think that's the kind of thing that can often cause a bit of tension, isn't it? In flats and things, as if you've got a space that everyone is can be used for a social space, but can also be used as a workspace. it's just worth talking to people about that, I think.
Yeah, and then in a way it could also be seen as an opportunity, right? An
Yeah.
opportunity to maybe create study groups.
Yeah.
And create times for everyone.
Where this can be a bit of a work.
Yeah. Because I think it's always better not to be on your own, but actually work with other people if possible, because that introduces some accountability, maybe. Maybe, I don't know, it can allow us to learn from each other as well. So from what I hear from my students, study groups are universally loved. And yeah, most students tell me that this was what saved them, even using words like this was what saved them from, completely losing either the motivation or even the ability to get organized and think critically about certain issues that they grapple with when pursuing their degree. So I think studying together and using maybe potential conflict as an opportunity to negotiate something that is mutually beneficial could be a nice opportunity. As Rahm Emanuel at some point said, never waste a good crisis. Although I think this quote has been attributed to many people, so whatever. But you know what? I have a controversial question.
Okay.
What about clothes? Do they matter?
Okay, so I might not be, well, first of all, yeah, I think some form of clothing probably does matter. Wear something, especially in a communal space.
Oh, yeah.
But I suppose, is your question more about what kind of clothes you're wearing?
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
Again,
Not just.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, yeah, so as a student, most of the time I would say as a student, I might have been a bit of a weird student, but I used to get up, shower, get dressed, have a cup of tea, have breakfast, then come into my room again and start a bit of work or check my emails or something like that. And I do think it can be useful to get up and do that getting dressed as part of your routine. However, on the flip side, I do understand that sometimes, and I'm sure I had those days too, where I was just like, I cannot be bothered to get out of my pajamas. And if the fact that I'm even doing some work, it is like impressive in itself. So I can't be bothered to make that next step. Sometimes I think it was also perhaps if I pushed myself, maybe I would have felt better though. So it's that sort of like you're not sure and you can only know how you're feeling, I suppose, know how you're feeling. But what do you think?
Yeah, I generally, I feel like you don't necessarily have to be maybe dressed in your best.
No, not like going to church.
Exactly. I mean, loungewear, obviously fine. But I think, like, to me, pajamas are a little bit, too far. I don't think I could focus in pajamas. But to me, it again goes back to that principle of being comfortable but not too comfortable, because this is work, and if we are too comfortable we can relax too much and just lose motivation to do anything that strains us in any way, and learning is straining. It is a little bit difficult. So to me, I like consistency, and I like a package, a full package, rather than but on my bad days, if I could, maybe I would be in pajamas. It's just the nature of my job.
Maybe we should have a podcast where we're in pajamas.
Yes.
Don't worry, no, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I agree with you. Although, yeah, I think maybe I'm sort of more of a wishy-washy on it, a little bit more wishy-washy in the sense that I can imagine there are times or places where I just be like, do as you feel, but at the same time, maybe when it's something really important, you might want to try and make that sort of step, take that step.
So maybe not a tie, but
definitely plus for clothes. Wear something is always a good
like clothes. Well, actually, in a way, this brings us to rules and rituals. I don't know, do you have any rules for when you work and have to concentrate, or any rules for yourself?
I don't know if I have like really strict rules, but I do try to do things in blocks, like and like have breaks. I don't follow like a specific technique. Like I know there's the Pomodoro, is it the
Pomodoro?
Pomodoro technique, which I think is it 25 minutes?
25 minutes, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes, 5 minutes break, and then you can extend it, but then you have a longer break.
Yeah, I don't think I do that so much, but I do probably recognize, I do say to myself, right, you've been working on this for an hour, maybe time to sort of make a cup of tea, kind of time to walk away from the computer, so for a little bit, or just go outside and get some air, kind of thing. I think that's really important to do.
Or having these kind of very well-defined blocks of time in which you do something. Yes, I don't know, 9 to lunchtime, you focus on these kinds of things, tasks, and then after lunch you do something else.
Because there's that, you'll know what it's called, isn't it? It's called a particular routine. Is it the circadian, or is it
oh no, I don't know.
What's it called? Like the scientists have sort of thought that there are specific points of time in the day.
Circadian rhythm.
That's it, circadian.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether everyone fits the pattern, because some people are more morning people, some people are more afternoon people. But I suppose that I normally I concentrate better in the afternoon, I think, but only for like a certain part of the afternoon. That makes sense. There's always that I do follow that sort of slump around sort of 4 o'clock, I think. So and I think then it can be really difficult to motivate yourself if you have got things to do that you have to work on in the evening to then go back to do it.
But knowing what is the best time in the day for you, that's also an important piece of knowledge about ourselves, right? So to use that time most productively rather than waste it on, because for example, if you know you work best in the morning, maybe that's not the best time to be answering emails and looking at social media, etc., because actually this is your productive time. So maybe that can be transferred to the afternoon, or vice versa. Right?
Some productive writers work best at like 6 o'clock in the morning, don't they? So
they're crazy people. But I'm asking about rules because I think rules actually really help, because rules actually allow us not to have to make decisions, because you just have a rule that you do things in a particular way and you follow that rule. I actually have only one very strict rule about something about, it's about snacking.
Okay.
I have one rule about snacking, which is I never eat anything after dinner. Like dinner is this, and there's no chocolate afterwards.
But see, what do you mean by dinner? Because some people call dinner lunchtime, some people
no, the kind of 7 p.m. dinner.
Okay.
Because it makes my life easier, especially when, let's say, I have injuries and cannot run or cannot exercise. I know that, by doing that, at least I will not be putting on extra pounds just because I wanted to have chocolates in the evening. So it just makes my life easier. But I know people who will take that chocolate and be like, "Oh, are you sure? Come on. I mean, is it not tempting to you?" And I'm like,
I could never have it on the desk, because I'm not one of those people that can just eat a Malteser and then sort of wait 5 minutes and have another Malteser. Like if I started a snack, I would just continue eating until everything is gone. So I'm always really impressed with people that will take a chunk of chocolate, put the rest back in their pocket or something, and then wait for a bit longer.
That's me.
I'd love to I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't do that. So.
Amazing. So rules, but
No
also
willpower.
rituals. Do you have any rituals when you work?
Rituals.
You mentioned a cup of tea.
I'm
Is that
not
a
sure.
ritual?
Yeah, I mean, like I'd like to have a cup of tea. Normally I will make one before I sort of start. So, and then there'll always be like a break where I sort of like go make one. And I used to sort of, then do maybe a little circuit of the garden or, yeah, or watch like some news on TV. I don't do that anymore, the news bit, um, but yeah, so you can just as a way of like switching off, I think sometimes can be
Yeah.
quite good. Yeah, I suppose that's kind of a ritual, isn't it, to some extent? Or just talking to my partner, so that you're just not you're not 100% always focused on work, that you can sort of like switch it off. What about you? What rituals do you have?
Yeah, I don't think I have enough rituals, to be honest. I think
No,
I
I
need
think
to
I need
develop
more as
more.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
have some rituals around drinks, as in teas. So I, always start the day with a green tea, and then I have another tea at 11.
I like
And
that.
then I have a different kind of tea in the afternoon, which is always ginger and lemon tea. And so, yeah, I have these kind of tea rituals. And I have a blanket, which I wrap around my legs when I sit down, because I
Oh,
always get cold. So that's kind of a ritual, I suppose,
yeah, I
which
think
makes me
that's,
comfortable. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I'm starting to use more tea leaves recently. So like making a proper pot of tea
Mm.
sometimes in the afternoon. That's quite a nice like ritual. So
Yeah. It's those little pleasures, right, that make even the space a more positive one, because I think
yeah.
it has to be positive. It has to have that vibe that we want to come back to, rather
Yeah.
than something
Or it
we
can be
avoid.
it can be a communal one as well, where you go, like I remember when I was a student, we all used to watch Neighbours like after like at I can't remember, like about 5 o'clock together. And I think
Yeah.
similarly my partner used to watch some kind of really bad doctors TV show in the afternoon. So I think that can often help
Yes.
too, doing that kind of communal thing.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I think, to be honest, the only thing I have to add, which kind of just kind of occurred to me, is that maybe it's also good to be able to make your study space portable, where you're not stuck in one space, but you can actually study wherever you go. And I don't know, if you commute, you can study on the train because you have access to all your stuff, or your books, or your articles downloaded, or a piece of writing you're working on your laptop. Or you can go to that coffee shop once they open again, yeah, and do that, because all you might need is Wi-Fi. Or actually, Wi-Fi could be the distraction that you don't need, that you're trying to escape. Yeah.
I think that will become more important, increasingly when people,
Yeah.
and I like that idea of the portable nature of study. But also, I do think that sometimes, I mean, the flip side, I suppose, is that sometimes you can just switch off from study. So,
Yeah.
go to
And
that
yeah,
cafe to study sometimes, but also just go to that cafe to have a coffee
yeah,
and
and then
chat about,
chat. Yeah.
yeah. So, or go to that, on that train ride, do a bit of work, but other times listen to that podcast that you wanted to listen to. So,
Yeah.
but
I know.
yeah,
You know what? I remember when I was doing my PhD, I did not leave the house ever without a book or an article or something that I had to read for class. And at some point, I couldn't quite remember or think about why am I in a particular place, because I was so removed from this environment, because I was actually, I don't know, in the queue reading my book, or
yeah.
waiting to pick up my daughter from school and reading the book, instead of maybe connecting with other mothers.
Yeah, it's the same with
So
me. I used to carry my pencil with me like everywhere for a while, and I couldn't get out the habit for a while, and just used to read fiction with a pencil still. So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, it's good to find breaks as well, or reasons for a break. But I don't know, maybe as a way of summarizing, we could say that it may not be possible to create a study space of your dreams, right? I mean, I'd love to have a plush velvet chair and a snooker table sized desk to work at. But I think even just thinking about what works best for us and just considering and trying different options
and thinking about the distractions, like
yeah, all of these may just make a world of difference to how we experience studying, working, etc. So ultimately, while there are certain recommendations based on all this research that we mentioned and experimentation, our own and other people's, I think we should study wherever and whenever it's best for our schedule, our personality, and our work habits, because it's always going to be unique to us. But if the way we're doing it doesn't bring the desired results, perhaps
think about changing it up.
Exactly. Worth maybe rethinking, playing, experimenting with different options, because sometimes making even the smallest adaptations can make a huge difference.
Definitely. My final point is, and wear clothes.
And wear clothes. And I would add to clothes, I would add shoes. You know that saying, find a shoe that fits and keep looking.
Yeah.
There you go.
I like that. I have to say, I've been wearing shoes consistently while at home. My partner, not so much, but I've been like, yes, you must wear shoes. So.
yeah. But find what works for you and keep looking if it doesn't, because there could always be a better way.
I like that.
Okay. Wow, that was a great conversation. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone else, for watching or listening to us. And feel free to subscribe to the podcast and comment, ask questions, and propose topics. So until next time.
Keep learning.
Keep learning. Bye.